we are today in St. Cecilia to reminisce about the good old days and what this gym meant to all of us in our basketball careers. I'm really happy to be joined by Earl Cureton on my right. Earl is a graduate of Finney High School and a two-time NBA champion, a good friend of mine for over almost 45 years now. And of course, the legendary Dave Bing, former mayor, but also a Hall of Famer, one of the 75 greatest players in NBA history, and godfather to us all, I might say. Derek Coleman, who was a #1 draft pick in the NBA some years ago, played at Syracuse, and is a 15-year,
yes, sir. Thank you.
15-year NBA veteran. Likewise for Grant Long on my far left. Grant was an Eastern Michigan star, played for several teams in the NBA over a long, long stretch. But what we all have in common, let me just introduce myself too. I'm Greg Kelser. I'm a Henry Ford grad and a Michigan State alum and Detroit Piston alum. What we all have in common is right here in this building, in this gymnasium, on this floor, the stories, the games, the friendships, the camaraderie, the history. We've seen it all and we're very proud of it, and we're here to talk about it today. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the gentleman right here, Dave Bing, because Dave, you were here in the late 60s. You were here during a turbulent time in the city of Detroit. You know the role that the late Sam Washington played in putting this idea of providing youth with a place to play, a place to stay out of trouble. Basketball was the main theme, but as it turned out, I think it had to far exceed what Sam ever dreamed it could be, and you were a huge part of that as an all-star player in the NBA with the Detroit Pistons at the time. Talk about those days.
I had met Sam in my rookie year, and I had come down here. He invited me to come down because at the end of my rookie year, I had a one-year contract, and after winning Rookie of the Year, I signed a 2-year contract with an option in my second year to renegotiate my contract. Well, I won the scoring championship my second year, and the Pistons really didn't want to renegotiate that third year. So I had to hold out from training camp, and I got fined. And I got fined over a total of $5,000. Which was a lot of money.
Oh yeah, that's 125 today.
So Sam made contact with Ed Coyle, who was then the general manager of the Pistons, and said, "What do you do with those fines?" And he said, "We give it to community-based organizations." So Sam said, "Well, that fits me. What can we do?" So the Pistons asked me, would it be okay to send that money to Sam here in St. Cecilia because he needed a scoreboard. And so we did that, and then me and Jimmy Walker decided that we would play and bring the Pistons down here to play in the summer league. And that was the beginning of St. Cecilia. And then I had a chance to look at these guys and see them flourish and play as young guys, yourself included. And then I became a fan, watching these guys develop and play competitively down here. And there are so many names, not just the 5 of us that are here, but there are so many other names in the history of great players from the city of Detroit that played here. So I am pleased to be back. I am pleased to have been a part of its beginning. And Sam did a great job.
I didn't know your fine money served as a foundation for all of this. And we're going to talk about some of those great players. Yeah. Earl, out of Finney High School, talk about your first time coming into this facility. What did you think? Did you have any idea, any clue how it would blossom and play such a role for so many players, including yourself?
Well, you heard stories about it. You know, you heard when Dave and them played here and all the great players that were coming here. And I had a chance to come the first time in the 11th grade in high school. You know, the PSL, had the league down here every summer. So our coach got us involved and got us in here in my 11th grade year, and I had an opportunity to come down here. Terrified, walking in the building, all the great players from all the different schools. And as you know, we both were in high school at the same time. The PSL was loaded with talent. Each team had, if not 2 Division I players, they had pros on it. At that particular time. So coming down here in the 11th grade and getting a chance to participate, that was the beginning of something great.
Derek, The legendary Derek Coleman, Northern High School. Take it over. Take it over. I don't need to say anything else. Go.
It's just what Earl said. For me, my first time coming in here was in the 10th grade in the summertime. My coach, Harry Harrison, we had our high school team playing. At the time, I was actually, if you believe it or not, was playing JV basketball. But that's just to let you know how much talent there was across the city of Detroit. That I didn't start on varsity until my 11th grade year.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so when he came here and we were taking the ball out, I forgot the team that was pressing us. So I had Johnny Williams and Jose Lewis, and they kept throwing the ball back and forth, and we was gonna get a 10-second call. And my coach calls a timeout, and he cusses all of us out in the timeout. Hey, you dumb right? And he said, Derek, you take the ball. Y'all throw the ball to the bounce and get it to Derek. That was my first version of it. That was the beginning. That was the beginning, handling the basketball, bringing the ball up the floor in the 10th grade.
Grant, I would imagine that you probably saw your uncle, John Long, play in here prior to your becoming of age and eligibility to play in this facility. Your thought?
Yeah, just like Derek and Earl there, my first experience here was in possibly the 10th grade. My coach, Al Wilkerson, my high school coach, loaded up the Maxima and brought us all down here.
The Maxima.
But here's the thing, I got to say this, being from Romulus, we never really ventured into the city of Detroit. That was like, okay, you came maybe to Telegraph Road and no further than that. Right. So when Coach said we're going down to St. Cecilia to play, we all knew what it was, but that didn't register. What registered was, we're going to Detroit.
Right.
Oh man, we're going to Detroit. And everybody was like, Coach was going to have to talk us into going to Detroit to play basketball because we had never been this far before. So once we got past the fear of actually coming to Detroit and got down here and saw exactly what it was, and then it was the whole competitive thing and the talent that was here that took over. We came that one time during high school and we kept coming week after week after week, and it just, I met Earl, like I said, Greg said my Uncle John was a part of the St. Cecilia's family, but to just join that fraternity of our awesome players that were already playing here and then to see it grow to where we saw it take off to was just phenomenal to be a part of that.
You know, the thing I remember most is that, I agree, or you come in here, it was intimidating because you would come in here and usually end up playing against people much older, much more experienced, yeah. And it was sort of like a baptism. You might leave with some scars, some stitches, I know I got some, but it was a badge of honor because if you could play in here, then you could take it and go elsewhere and do pretty good. That was my experience.
You left out here, you really saying, I played at the Saint. And that was, like you said, a badge of honor.
No question.
Dave, you were responsible for getting some more pros to come in here, right? As an opportunity to get ready for the new season each year?
Yeah, well, I made sure the whole Piston team participated. And we never played here as a team because we split up because we thought it would be unfair for us to play against some of the younger guys around the city. So Walker took a team, I took a team. When Lanier came, he took a team. And we were all happy to be here, and it was very competitive. And then as we saw these guys come and grow up and develop, we knew that we had done the right thing.
Okay, so as we move on and we talk about some of the great players, I mean, the names are far too numerous to even try to recount them all, but I will say this, and I want your thoughts on this. One of the things that used to really amaze me, and even more so as I look back on it now, we didn't have social media, we didn't have cell phones, but how word could travel when the stars were coming, and how that parking lot out there was so filled you couldn't get a parking spot for blocks away. Word got out that Dave Bing or George Gervin or Campy Russell at the time, that they were coming to the Saint. People would just come from everywhere, and this place would fill up. It was the place to be. It was a happening. I still to this day don't know how that could have possibly, I mean, word of mouth is one thing, but that soon, I mean, at 2 o'clock, word might get out, and then 4 o'clock, they're there and they're playing.
Yeah. You know, when in my rookie year, the best high school team was Persian. With Spencer Haywood.
Don't say that.
And Ralph. At that time.
I don't want to hear Steve mouth. Don't say that.
But those were two guys, and they had good players surrounding the two of them. And they won the state championship. But they were like men playing with boys in high school. And so even as high school players, they came down here with a team and they competed and they won a hell of a lot of the games. And then each one of them went on at the collegiate level, had outstanding collegiate careers and then on into the pros. But that was part of the beginning. And between the pros from the Pistons and some of the great high school players that we had in this area, it was a great beginning for Sam.
Derek, you, again, being right here, not far from here, growing up in the area, and then, of course, attending Northern High School. Now, in the beginning, St. Cecilia was really it was set up to be a place for the high schoolers. Mm-hmm. So high schools from all over the state eventually would come into this facility. Who are some of the great names, though, that you played against in here and played with?
Oh, man. Well, playing with, always, me and Steve Smith always played together since we were kids.
You guys were good together.
Yeah,
I saw that.
yeah, we always played together here at St. Cecilia. But when I go back and just think about, our era, the 80s and the 90s, B.J. Armstrong, Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, Vashawn Leonard, Tractor Traylor, rest in peace, Howard Isley, Carlos Rogers, Mateen Cleaves, Glenn Rice, like all those guys would come down from Flint and Saginaw and play with us. So again, this was just like the mecca of basketball for us. I would say the main thing though, Greg, even for me doing it in high school and then being able to move to the pro and the college level is competing against you guys. Like I share those stories all the time because I'm like, you know what? I was destined for basketball because iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. And this is what you said. I can't tell you how many times somebody done knocked me into them steps, back there. Kevin Willis. Yeah. Beat me up and helping me up at the same time.
Another Persian guy.
Yeah, exactly. And a Michigan State guy. Spartan. Yeah, so again, we're taking our lessons, from that. But I always look at how much confidence that gave us, as kids, like, hey, man, we going to go take on the world. Nobody's better than us. And when I look back at college basketball during that time, we ran college basketball. Even when I got to the NBA in 1990, almost every team in the NBA had somebody on their team from Michigan. Wow. And, every time I walked out on the court, and it's a saying that we say here in Detroit, y'all, is what up, though? So I was saying what up, though, to all of my homeboys every time. When I played Miami, it was Grant, Steve, Willie. Glenn, Willie. You know what I'm saying? So, a whole Michigan team, man. So that's the great part about it. I think people really don't understand, how rich our tradition is here.
What you guys probably don't know is when I met Earl. Earl is 6'9" now. But Earl was 6'2" when I met him. If that, playing guard here in St. Cecilia. In fact, Earl, do you remember when they finally opened it up so that college players could play in like the summer college pro league? But you couldn't play with your teammate, your college teammate. You had to. So Earl and I teamed up. Earl was at the University of Detroit. I was at Michigan State. So we teamed up. And then my teammate at Michigan State, Urban Johnson, teamed up with, no, you played with Urban.
No, it was an all-guard team. Durod, William Harmon, Magic, all of them, and we had an all-big team. I mean, we got killed that summer, if you remember that. We went up against those guys, me, you, Irv Giddings, all of us, all the bigs against and Magic and Harmon and them. It was a disaster.
It just didn't seem right playing against Irvin. He was my teammate, but he's in here trying to whoop up on me with all these other guys and everything. But so Grant, you the junior member of this quintet. Who were some of the players that stood out and that frightened you, but then maybe at one point you were able to climb to an even par with them and felt like you were progressing in your career? Who were some of those guys?
Well, I was a tag along a lot of times with Earl and my Uncle John because they were buddies. So whenever they got to an open gym situation, I was always one of the guys that they would invite. So I was able to, as Derek said, to sharpen my irons against those guys. But when you got here, you never knew who you were going to run into. People were just, oh, that's so-and-so, and that's that guy, this guy just left. It's just one floor here. You think about how many basketball floors, when you go to play in a tournament, there's 6 or 7 floors and 4 or 5 different games going on. One game, and it started from the morning all the way to night, and there was one game on this floor and everybody's sitting around waiting. So you got a chance, if you got here early enough, to see a lot of talent, a lot of guys that would be celebrities, if you will. We had this conversation about comparing the St. Cecilia to the Rucker in New York. Well, my take was, at the Rucker, Dr. J and all of those guys played, but they played when they were pros.
Yeah.
When you came through the St., you were in high school, and you grew up here, and then you ascended to the pros. So you came through this almost as a program.
And college.
And even in college, and you still came back as a pro. So you grew up here. Derek said when he learned how to dribble, because coach said, hey, just give the ball to Derek, he's gonna break the press. And Smitty and I, when we were teammates, used to talk about that kind of stuff all the time, about how we, as Michigan players, growing up here and playing here, we were able to do more than one thing. If you didn't shoot the ball, you rebounded. If you didn't rebound it, you were able to bring the ball up the floor at 6'5", 6'6". How were we able to dribble the basketball? And at that time, you're a power forward or you're a center. That should be the guard's job. Well, we learned all of that here out of necessity. And that's one of the biggest takeaways that I learned, like you said, the competitive part of it, but being able to be sharpened by so much of the great talent that was here.
I would like to say this. We're talking about what happened in this gym on this floor. But as each one of these guys said, they would come down because games would start in the morning and go until nighttime.
Yeah.
Well into the night.
Okay, so what would happen off the court was, as you said, the parking lot was full.
Yes.
So if any of these guys played in an early game, they didn't leave.
No.
They went out to the parking lot. And then there were conversations about what to expect.
That's right.
You know, we as older guys would bring these young guys around us, talk to them about their strengths, their weaknesses, what they needed to do, what their future was going to look like. And I think that really helped a lot of these guys in forming of who they were going to be or wanted to be. But the fan base was unbelievable. We, at certain times, people left the stands and went to the parking lot so that they could get close to these guys.
Yeah.
They just wanted to touch them, and that was so important. So our fans really were very, very fortunate to see these guys play and then develop as people.
Sure.
Really accessible when you got outside and even here to the whole community that was here to watch.
I just want to bring up the class of 75 and 74 because that's our high school class that day. And I talk about it all the time because it's unbelievable how many pro athletes we had come out that particular time. I mean, you were the fourth player chosen in the draft out of that 75 class. William Mayfield played for the Golden State Warriors. Lawrence Knight played for the Utah Jazz. Bruce Flowers, number one pick, Bruce Flowers for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Tom Staten, they went on to Michigan. Myself, Terry Durard came out with the Boston Celtics. The year before was John Long, Cyrus Mann, William Harmon. I mean, I can go on naming players, playing Terry Tyler. All these guys were right in our era. We had no idea what was happening when we were in high school. I mean, you could average 20 points a game in the PSL and still be third team because you had so many great players, So it's like, but all these guys would come down here and play. And I played against Greg in high school. Like you said, I was 6'4", 6'5", by the time I became a senior in high school. But our class of 75, you look back on it, and it was so many pros, and Allen Harding, Lakers, I can just my mind just keep thinking about all those guys that, that came out during that particular era. And everybody's got their own story about their own generation. They're going to be sit in the stands and watch us. Him and Steve would be up there, Doug Smith and those guys. And, then Grant and them came along. Me and John used to come down and beat up on you and Terry down in Romulus when y'all were in high school.
And there were a lot of guys that played basketball on those 73, 74, 75 high school teams that were football players and ended up playing in the NFL. Guys like Tom Sebron, Ron Simpkins, Curtis Greer. I mean, just on and on and on. It was a tremendous time. It really was. But we're going to move to this segment now. I want to talk about what we see here now. I want to talk a little bit about the legacy. The one thing that stands out to me when I come in the building, I played in this facility from 1972 to 1988. So I started as a 10th grader, and I finished, went through college, the NBA, and then a little bit afterwards, all those years playing in here. But the one thing that stands out to me as I come in here now is all this padding. We had this padding. What's all this padding, Dave? I mean, along the wall.
They got smart. They didn't have the money to put all this padding up, number one, but I bet you all of us ran into these walls.
The wall was the padding. The wall was the pad.
Times. You had to learn how to brace yourself, how to put your forearm to brace yourself and get back out there.
How to stop. That's a fast break, and you got to stop before you run into
And we're talking about the summer. You know, summer in Michigan can get kind of warm. There was no air conditioning in here.
The door was left open. The windows were open. It's crazy.
It was unbelievable, but it was home. It was where, I mean, we longed to come to this place. And as I look back on it, I wonder sometimes, you know, how would my growth as a player, how would my growth as a person, really, because of the many people that I met and were able to interact up here. One thing I can say about, you know, Dave and Willie Norwood and other Piston players, they were accessible. Here are pro athletes that you can touch. You know, they're right here in your midst. Sometimes I wonder just how it might have turned out for me without all that I learned and the confidence. First the fear that I overcame, and then the confidence that I ended up developing here.
But it's just what you said, Greg. You know, the fear, the confidence, but also being able to have access to everybody. I mean, me as a kid, and I'm sitting at home and I'm watching, you know, the Pistons play or whatever, and I come to St. Cecilia in the summertime, and I'm watching the Pistons play, but I'm able to, hey man, I'm shagging balls. Or let me see your jump shot. You know what I'm saying? So I'm actually playing basketball with guys I grew up watching, idolizing as a kid. We don't have that, you know, anymore. It's like everything has been privatized, and I think that's why you see the decline in sports, not only here but across the country. Because when I coached when I was in college, I came home in the summertime. I coached my high school team every Saturday here at St. Cecilia. And then, like you said, we would sit and wait 2-3 hours for the college program to start. Then I get dressed and go play, you know. But I think when you start privatizing everything and the guys don't come home as much as they used to, you lose so much. You know, it declines because now I don't have anybody to look up to anymore.
Well, it's like Dave said, when after a game to go out in the parking lot and interact with the community, that was, you know, that was big. That was.
Yeah, that's the biggest education.
And you mentioned, I mean, those guys were our developmental coaches in a way. They told us what we were doing wrong after they kicked our butt in here. You talked about Kevin Willis and what he used to do, but at the end of that, when we went out to the parking lot and all that was all said and done, it was good job, young fella. Good job, young fella. Keep working. You're gonna be all right. Exactly. That little bit of encouragement went such a long way because of who it came from. Exactly. That's what brought us back week after week after week, because we knew we would get that pat on the back and say, come on back, fella, you're doing all right.
That's funny you guys mentioned Kevin Willis, because we trained him. You know, we used to beat Kevin Willis up. We ran him out of the gym when he first came in here. I used to laugh. They started calling him enforcer when he got in the league, but I remember coming up to St. Cecilia, we owned Kevin Willis. So that's where he learned from.
I mean, Roy Tarpley. I mean, there's so many guys, you know, we sit here. My whole game was patting off of Roy Tarpley, you know, because he was like the first big that I seen besides Magic that can rebound, handle it, jump shot, post up, mid-range. So I'm sitting in those stands watching him play, being a big guy. And there's something that you said earlier, Grant, when you talk about all of us always had a skill set. We can do everything. We just want a basic basketball player. And I just credit that to, again, playing against all these guys, iron sharpens iron, and being able to develop that skill. Because a lot of time, especially me growing up being a tall kid, I'm just put in one position. Hey, you the center, you know what I'm saying? Well, now, Coach, I'm a basketball player. I've been taught by great guys, great coaches that, no, Derek can handle the basketball. He can shoot it. He can put no limits. And we all of them, when I look across the board at all of us, no matter if you're a guard, small forward, center, we all had a skill set.
That was the great thing about seeing those guys here, because you saw Gervin in here doing what he do, scoring like that. Oh, yeah, I'm a center, but I'm going to score like Gervin. Exactly. I'm going to do that.
You know, when you think about it, imagine, could you really get an all-star, an all-time great like a George Gervin or you know, Dave Bing today to come and play in a place like this in the summertime, risk injury and to do it for free? That's what made it so unique. So, you know, with that in mind, Dave, how important is it for some for recognition and understanding of how important this is, and for it to somehow continue and be supported?
I mean, just sitting here with you guys, I know your background, I know your history, and I know what you're doing now. So it's a continuum from when you were a youngster in high school. And the great thing about Detroit and so many talented people that we had, you still come back home. You still are here, and you're making an impact in the community. I think the fans that were here, a lot of them, as cheap as tickets were back then, they still couldn't afford to go to Cobo.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so they came here to engage and appreciate the kind of talent that was here all the time. I mean, I coached 3 years, different teams, and I didn't know George Gervin in the beginning until he was a senior in high school. And he was the first guy on my team that I said, oh my God, this guy's ready. He can play now. He can play now. I know I'm going to be playing against him. You know? Then the next great one, he didn't have the career George had, was D-Rod. I mean, he was unbelievable.
He was.
In high school.
He was.
I knew that he was going to be a pro.
He was unbelievable.
So,
It was unbelievable
Whoa.
at 45.
You're right. Shooting that ball.
When you look back, and you guys are talking, you bring out a lot of names up that the fans here in Detroit remember, respected, and appreciate because you're still here doing good things.
You know, the Detroit Pistons are going to pay homage to the St. Cecilia legacy with a Ceciliaville fashioned uniform. And I think that that's going to be tremendous in terms of continuing the awareness and helping people to understand. I know the Pistons brought the team, brought the young players. They were able to come in here and get a feel for what, and it was great because, you know, this where this place sits in the heart of the hood, so to speak, in the heart of the neighborhood. But you felt comfortable here. There was no threat whenever we would come down here. And then to bring the youngsters in to see this. We got the uniform? Here we go. How about this, guys? This is what the Pistons will wear at one point this season, because the Pistons do understand what this place has done, the lives that it has saved, the impact it has had on the lives of so many. Dave, I know how you are about this city. I know there's been a park that was commemorated in your honor in the city of Detroit that's being refurbished right now, and you're spearheading that effort. But this kind of goes right along with that in terms of trying to give the young people a place to go, a place where they can feel safe, a place where they can experience what we've experienced and what we're all talking about.
Well, this helps, I think, to bring pride into so many of us in the city of Detroit. Because if you're a part of this, you know you are part of something that was very great. You talked about the comparative with other cities, other locations, and you talked about Rucker. Well, guys from the East Coast love Rucker. The guys from Philadelphia,
Baker League.
they had the Baker League. But those were before the Saint. And now the Saint, I think because of the Pistons and guys like us, we're going to make sure that people remember just how important this was to so many people, not only as us as players, but once again, the fans loved coming here also. So it really connected the city with some of the greatest athletes and some of the greatest people that I've met in my 50-plus years here in Detroit.
I want to give each of you, go ahead, or you got something?
Yeah, well, I had the conversation with Derek about St. Cecilia in terms of keeping it going. I've been on a crusade to try to make sure. Yeah, I'm sitting on the board with Ike McKenna. Me and Ike McKenna sit around and talk about it for a long time. I invited Dave in, but I've been trying to pull everybody together so that we don't let this place go down. We want to bring it back, give the youth an opportunity. Derek came up with a great idea. I was talking to him, and he was saying, why not have our middle school kids start a league up here once we get the gym back operating again? So we're in the process. We're raising money right now. We got a lot of people that's involved in it right now, that's getting involved. We're hoping that we get more, and this is going to help the process of doing that, because our youth desperately needs something like this now. It worked for us. We're talking about all the experiences we had as kids. we want to give the youth now that same opportunity, but on a bigger level right now, and that's what my whole ideal was. And we've been at it for about 3.5 years with Ike and Lori, and we kept the board pretty small. We, conversations with Dave about it, conversations with Derek about it. So we're trying to pull everybody in the same place, in the same space, and make it happen again.
And I think that's key, what you're talking about, Earl, because as we talk here and we go back, and the fondest memories that we share are the engaging.
Yes.
So being present, even though it's a middle school, basketball team, being present, to have Derek Coleman at that game or at that practice, being present is what we'll all remember, what those young players remember.
I want to make sure that we give kudos to the Pistons.
Yes.
Because they've come to the table and to the city in a significant way.
Yep.
I mean, my 9 years playing with the Pistons, downtown Detroit, I mean, that was glory days for me. And as they left the city, you wonder, what's going to happen now? But the reason that they're back in the city and going full force to make sure that the people in the city know that they're back and they're investing in a lot of different things in the city, and this is going to be a significant investment for the next generation.
Well, I want to say this, Troy, we would be upset because when they came down here as a team, the coalition league they had in Washington, D.C. was another good league, too. So I talked about the Baker League, the Rucker, and he brought it up. He said, we had the coalition. I said, okay, I got you on that.
Well, you know what? Hopefully what the Pistons are doing here in St. Cecilia will be picked up maybe by the Knicks or the Nets in New York and by the 76ers in Philadelphia, the Wizards in Washington, understanding that this has to be a collaborative effort. In every city it should be, because there are youth in every city, and basketball is a sport that everyone gravitates to. And you can help a lot of kids, a lot of youngsters, the way we were helped with this. What I'd like to do right now is just ask each of you to just go back in your memory, if you will, and if you can come up with something that just really truly stands out personally for you. And I'll start. I mentioned that the great and late Dan Roundfield, who I really admired. He's the one guy I thought, if there was anybody that could get up in the air from a standstill higher than Terry Tyler, it was Dan Roundfield. I had the audacity to think I could dunk on Dan Roundfield in here one day. And I went up, he got a hand on the ball. You know how when you go, I'm trying to push it down, he's holding it, and the ball just kind of goes up in the air. It went back through the hoop, but as we were coming down, he was higher than I was, obviously. As we were coming down, his elbow caught me right above the eye, just opened me up, man. Blood was everywhere. And as I said, while I was hurting, I was still cool with it because it was Dan Roundfield, okay? It was Dan Roundfield who I had just encountered at the summit. But my memory is this. And to your point about you just never know. Yeah. You just never know who you might run into down here. I met my future teammate and one of the greatest players that ever played this game, Irvin Magic Johnson, right on the front steps. Wow. I was leaving, he was coming in. He was coming in with his high school team from Everett. He was a 10th grader, I was a senior in high school. And we were like, hey man, what's up, how you doing? And who knew? Right. Who knew that eventually we would be teammates, we would be partnering at Michigan State, we would be winning a championship and all of that, and the impact that he had on my life and career, you just never know. So that's the one for me.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Right. That's a big one. I have so many running through my mind right now. I really would say, just like you said with Dan Roundfield, able to actually sit here, play a game and to look and to see George sitting in the stands watching you play, and then again, when you talk about access, to be able to finish playing and to walk up in those stands and sit down next to him and talk to him about basketball for like 2-3 hours, I would say that was one of my greatest, memory here, to actually see somebody that you grew up idolizing and then be able to sit and really hold and have a conversation, with them about basketball. And that's what Dave said earlier, telling you, hey, you need to work on this. You did this wrong. You done that wrong. But you got it, young fella. Keep working. Yeah.
For me, I think it was just to be able to play, as a high school kid, even as a college kid, and all of a sudden I'm playing against pros. And what that did for me is, well, I may have only had 10 or 12 points, but I scored against pros. Right. And that let me know that, boy, I'm in college or in high school and I scored against pros. I may have a shot at this thing. It made me go back and work even harder because I knew I had to play against pros, and if I could play against them, I might have a shot at it. And that's what continued to fuel me onto the pros.
I watched you, Grant, from your first year at Eastern Michigan, and I can tell you that I was always proud of how you made yourself into a great basketball player, how you worked hard and developed, and there were no steps skipped in your development and your maturation, and that's why you had such a long career in the NBA.
Memory for me, I have to go with Derek with the George Gervin thing. Dave talked about the prices at Cobo Hall. Well, it was $1 to get in here, and Sam Wash would sit at the door and collect them dollars. But when George Gervin came in, it went up to $2. So, and it would be lined all around the corner. You knew he was coming. And the word would get out. It'd be a couple of days, Sam would kind of leak it that George's gonna be here on the weekend, and they'd be lined up around the corner, to come in to see George Gervin, and he never disappointed. Every time he came in here, it was back-to-back 50s. Against no matter who he's playing against, he would put a show on. And the other big memory is I couldn't wait until the season was over in the NBA. After winning the championship, I wanted to come back and play in the Saints. In fact, we would see each other during the course of the season, say who's gonna win the Saints this summer. So I decided one summer to bring Daryl Dawkins home with me. So I got Daryl. Daryl drove up, and we came up to Saints, and I brought him in the gym, and Wash met me at the front door. Why, I said, big fella, I'm sorry, but we ain't got no more backboards. You can't play up here. Because I would try to stack my team every summer with everything that I could, from Durod to John to Tyler to whoever I could find.
So just what you're saying when you talk about stacking teams. Like I said, me and Steve always played together. And then we had Lorenzo Neely, Cahill Felder, like all the other guys playing with us. Jalen would come in, it'd be Jalen, Chris, Maurice Taylor, Tractor Traylor, Howard Isley, and Vashawn Leonard on the same team. All NBA players. Me and Steve killed them. we killed them, man, every time. Yeah, but they would always stack their team against us all the time, man. But that was the fun, that we had.
I'm gonna pay homage to Dave real quick because a lot of people really don't know, or they think that Dave is actually from Detroit because he's done so much for the city of Detroit. Yeah. But he came from DC and never left. And it took me a while to let that resonate, to say, man, Dave is not from here. But he cares so much about this city. And I just want to tip the hat to you and say salute to you, man, because everybody doesn't do that. They go back home, and I know you still do stuff in the DC area, but you're here. And you're the guy.
And without him, we probably wouldn't have a St. Cecilia right now. If it weren't for that holdout and the beginning of the story, and that's what I always, and the money that he donated. I mean, all this, he's definitely the godfather of what happened here. There's no question about it. And his name's the first one to come up when you mention the Saints.
Oh, come on, man. He's the reason I went to Syracuse. When I first moved here, 13 years old, I couldn't even find shoes. And my high school coach knew Dave, Harry Harrison, introduced me to him, and I mean, he's been everything to me. Yeah. My friend, my father, my partner in crime, he's been everything. And I never forget, him taking me to Syracuse as a kid, and being on a college campus for probably the first time, in my life, and like, wow, and then he sent me back every summer, hey man, you need to get out the city. 2 weeks, I would go up there and spend time, Bernie Fine, Steve Hall. Actually, Steve Hall used to go, who's the coach at Cass now. Me and him used to go every summer to basketball camp with Dave. And see, he's never going to share that with y'all. He's so humble about it. So he always gives us gems. You know what I'm saying? Like, he'll throw them out there at us. Yeah, we be having dinner sometime, and he'll be like, Oh yeah, yeah, I played baseball. What you mean you played baseball?
Well, we all wanted to be like Dave. He was the Pistons, and then along with Bob Lanier, they were the Pistons. But we just lost a friend and a comrade, Willie Norwood, a couple of weeks ago, and I can tell you when I talk about young kids having access to pro athletes right there in your neighborhoods. Willie Norwood ran the Detroit neighborhood basketball program that I participated in as a 14-year-old at Henry Ford High School in the summer. And we became friends then. He was a mentor. He was a nice guy, had this Cadillac. We get in the Cadillac, go down to Cunningham Drugs and get ice cream and everything. This is what he did for the kids. He's a pro athlete.
Yes.
And that friendship lasted 50 years until he passed away a couple of weeks ago. I know he and Dave were very, very close. I met Dave when I was in high school because Ben Kelso, who was a former Piston, had just been released by the Pistons. He came over to Henry Ford and became an assistant coach. Dave came over to visit him. Hey, there's Dave Bing in the gym. I met Dave then. And then he coached the round ball team that I played on coming out of high school. And he too has been a mentor and a friend for over 50 years. So it's, that's what basketball, that's the thing I love about basketball. Earl knows I preach about it all the time. Basketball can provide you with not only great memories, but it can provide you with friendships and relationships that will endure a lifetime.
Willie and Bob used to have.
It's always bigger than basketball.
Willie and Bob used to have the Strohs truck. You remember the Strohs truck? They brought that to Brewer Recreation Center when I was about 13, 14 years old. And Bob would let the hoop down in the back, and when they throw T-shirts out to us in the crowd. So I met Bob. I got a chance to get close to Bob and Willie. He worked with him in the summertime.
So, sir, we thank you. As we pay, as we salute and recognize the legacy that is Saint Cecilia. It's only fitting. It's only fitting that we, include you in that, especially learning what we just learned today about your impact. Yeah, your impact in the startup of this. We'll let you close it, if you will.
Well, being in this session with you guys is really good for me because I've seen the impact that the game has had on you as people. I've seen the impact that you guys have brought to the Saint, and you are still here doing some very positive things. So I just want to once again tip my hat to you all because I look at all of you as lifelong friends now. And the relationships that I have with each of you is different, but it's the same because we all come from the same place, and we're here to help each other, and now you're here to help the next generations. So thank you for being here. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for who you are.
And that's our story from St. Cecilia. It doesn't get any better than this. And we hope that 50 years from now, there'll be another group of gentlemen here talking about the same things and the impact and the importance of this great place.